So obviously the term Latin percussion is very broad, but like I mentioned before, we can focus in a little bit on Cuban percussion and Brazilian percussion because those two, not only are they really common in this country, but also there's a lot of common threads and rhythmic ideas that can bridge the gap between a lot of different traditions. So obviously, you know, every country pretty much in Latin America has their own tradition and a lot of different styles and histories that go into it. But let's just get started with some clave. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that scholars and ethnomusicologists have brought up about where clave came from. So I think most of us are probably familiar, since we're all musicians, with a 6/8 bell pattern, right? So 2, 3, right? So that West African 6/8 bell pattern somehow transformed into a 4/4 clave rhythm. And how that happened was in Afro-Cuban music, there is a rhythm called Abacua. Now, Abacua has a clave that sounds like this. Two, three, four. 2, 3, 4. So the difference.
No, we can't always hear that.
Let me make sure
We can hear a couple of the notes, but then some of them go away.
So I've noticed that in Zoom meetings with bells, the sustain doesn't come through at all. So I'm wondering if you can undo your entire lesson plan and do it on sticks instead.
Let me see. Let me try and change my sound settings. Let me make sure.
Okay.
I'm good. Okay, let's try it now. All right, great. So again, this pattern, the West African 6/8 bell pattern, which is, you know, ubiquitous in all kinds of different styles. That's 7 notes. Now, if you take away 2 notes, you get to the Abacua Clave, which has 5. Now that's still in 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then, so this clave, which is in 6/8, can then become the 4/4 clave. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's basically how the 6/8 bell pattern transformed into a 4/4 clave rhythm. And there's a lot of debate around the clave in different ways, because you can think of it in so many different ways, especially when we get to writing it as opposed to just learning it orally. So if anyone here, I'm sure a lot of us are used to reading instead of learning things orally, I can just show you real quick what that looks like with staff notation. So this is one way of looking at the clave as 2 bars. And traditionally in Cuban music, you can think of the clave in 1 bar, and that would be in 16th notes rather than 8th notes. But this is, I think, a little bit easier to understand in 2 bars, because you have the first half, which is basically breaking up a bar into equal parts, right? So you have these 2 notes, the first 2 are equally spaced as the second 2 notes in the first bar. Then you have the second half, which is just on the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So the 2 and the 3. Now this middle note right here is what is called the bomba of the clave, and that is what gives it its flavor. So I think now is a good chance for everyone to start playing a little bit, and let's just all play together this rhythm. So I'll play on some real claves, and if anyone has a clave or anything to hit, or you can just clap, but let's all play this together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Two, 3, 4, 1. So this clave that we're playing right now is known as the Son Clave, and in Cuba there are many different claves. There's a Changui Clave, there's Son Clave, Rumba Clave, Arara Clave, Abacua Clave, which we have covered. But today, let's just focus on Son Clave and Rumba Clave, which are basically the same except for 1 note. So each clave has 5 notes, right? And in Son Clave, you have da 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 da. Whereas in the Rumba Clave, the 3rd note is displaced. Not going to worry about technicalities. Let's just hear it before we try and name it. So again, Son Clave, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. The Rumba Clave, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Da 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 woo da 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 woo da 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 woo da da. So with that displacement on the 3rd beat, let's all play that again in Rumba Clave. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. Now, an exercise that I like to do, which is something that I've seen a lot of teachers do, my teacher would have me do, which is counting and playing clave at the same time, which is not easy, but it really is great to get used to playing the clave, especially if you're coming at it from music that's focused on downbeats and not so much these kinds of rhythms. So we can count it in 2 bars right now in 8th notes to make it even a little bit simpler. But it'll sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So from that you can hear that that second note of the clave or the bomba is on an offbeat, right? So that is the end of 2. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 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 4. And so again, that is the Son Clave. Now if we're going to switch to Rumba Clave, we just displace the third note, in this case by an eighth note. So that would sound like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So now we have the first note, which is on a downbeat, 1. We have the end of 2, 1 and 2 and we have the end of 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So the bomba of the clave, again, the second note, which is in both Rumba Clave and Son Clave on the end of 2, is really important because that gives the music its cadence. So it's important to not rush that, but make it really land right on time, because for example in Rumba Wawanko, sorry, we have a question?
So the note that's displaced is the 4 on the first measure. Like in the first clave, it's on the 4, and on the no, which note's displaced?
That's correct. Yes, on the 4.
And then on the second one, it's on the and of the 4.
Exactly. Yeah. So Son
okay.
Clave.
Okay.
Son Clave is with the third note on the 4.
Okay.
And Rumba Clave has the and of 4.
I'm having a blast. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, me too. All right. Yes. So the bomba of the clave, which is the second note if you're starting on the 3 side of the clave. In Wawanko, for example, that is accented on the conga with a bass tone. So pa pa u pa 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 u pa pa. Right? So that note really gives the dancer a lot of energy. You'll see when people really accent that second note of the clave, it creates a lot of energy for the dancer to start improvising. So as an exercise, something I like to do is just play the 2 different claves back to back. So we'll do 4 rounds of Son Clave and then 4 rounds of the Rumba Clave with displacing the third note onto the and of 4. So let's just all do that together right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now switch to Rumba Clave. Pa, 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 u, pa, pa. Pa, 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 u, pa, 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 u. Back to Son Clave. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, Awesome. I want to hear some people now, just so we can get a little, get more involvement, everyone hearing each other and enjoying that part, because we don't get to be in the same room. At least we can hear what each other are doing. So if anyone wants to unmute and play those two claves separately, the Son Clave and the Rumba Clave, I'd love to hear someone play that. Not everyone at once. Come on.
All right, I'll go in. I don't know if this is loud enough. I'm just using sticks. Let me use bigger sticks. Okay, are we doing 3-2? Oh, sorry, we're doing 3-2.
Great. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up 3-2 versus 2-3, because that was actually something that I'm going to cover. So thanks, Francine, for segueing perfectly into this concept, which is 3-2 versus 2-3. What does that mean? So it actually is helpful to think of clave in two bars in this case, because you have one bar, which is the 3, and one is the 2. Meaning there's 3 notes in one bar and 2 notes in another bar, because it's a 5 note rhythm. However, in Cuba, almost no one thinks of clave as 3-2 or 2-3. That's something that came about probably, I would guess, in New York, from salsa arrangers who were trying to make it easier for a percussionist to just read down a chart and say, okay, I know where I am in the rhythm without ever having heard a song. Because the clave and the melody and the chord structure all go hand in hand. So let's take, for example, a song, El Manicero, which is, you know, a very famous Cuban song. So you have the part that goes ding boom boom, a ding 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 ding, ding boom boom, a ding 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 ding. You can see that the melody is literally just lining up with the clave. Boom, bing, boom, boom, bing, 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 boom, bing, boom, boom, ding, 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 ding. So a Cuban wouldn't say that song is in 2-3. They would just think this is El Manicero and this is how the melody sounds. Bum, 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 bum. So clave and melody go hand in hand. It's really important to think of clave and melody together, and not like the clave is something sitting on top of the song without any correlation, because the chords, the melody, and the rhythm are all linked. Let's see if I can think of another example of a melody that well, that's okay. We'll come back to that. But so 2-3 versus 3-2, it's really important to know that yes, you should think of the two sides of the clave, because it's important to know what side of the clave you're entering the song on. So if someone's counting off a song, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or if you're going to start on the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. So it just depends on where the harmonic structure is going and where the melody is rhythmically, to be able to know when you start a song, is it going to start off 1 or 1, 1. So let's practice that a little bit. You can start the clave either on the 3 side or on the 2 side, as we call it here, 1, 1. So just in Son Clave, let's all just work on counting that like that, and playing on the 2 side now. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I switched to counting it as 1 bar because I think it makes it easier to hear the difference between 2, 2, 3, and 3, 2 if we're just counting it like that. So now let's count it in 3 on the 3 direction. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, back to the 2 side. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome, great. So yeah, it's just really important to work on starting the clave on the 2 side or the 3 side, but also remembering that it just depends on what the melody and the chords are doing. It's not like the clave is just sitting on top. Like I said, it's very ingrained in the melody of a song in Cuban music. So branching off from the clave, let's talk about 1/2 of the clave, the 3 side. That we can also just repeat as a clave on its own, and it would sound like this. That rhythm is called a tresillo because it has 3 repeating notes, and it's a really common rhythm in what we'll call Latin music. You know, you can hear that in reggaeton, you can hear it in Afro-Cuban bata drumming, in Brazilian music, in Cuban country music. All kinds of music has the tresillo rhythm, which is, again, just the first half or the 3 side of the clave. So let's all work on counting that again as 1 bar per 3 notes. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 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 And 1 and 2 and 4. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 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 1, 2, 3, 4. So in Cuba, there's a style of music which comes from the country in Guantanamo called Changui. And Changui has a different kind of clave. In Changui, they don't use the clave of 3-2 or 2-3 like that, or the Son Clave, the Rumba Clave. It's just the Changui Clave, which is based on the Tresillo rhythm. So if we take out the 1 and we just play the end of 2 and the 4, you have the Changui Clave, which sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. So this is a really good one to practice because you don't have that one locking you in. So you really have to just feel it inside while playing that. So let's work on this together. Let's all count and clap that Changui Clave together. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. So thanks everyone for participating. I really appreciate that. So Changui is a really great style of music to look into. And it's so important that I'm going to type it into the chat. So if you haven't heard of Changui and you're not familiar with those rhythms, check it out, because Changui is where basically all of what we know as salsa, son cubano, it all comes out of Changui. So the most important thing being the tres, which is a guitar-like instrument with 3 sets of 2 strings, which is where the piano montuno comes from, emulating the style of the tres, which comes out of Changui. So the way they play the tres in Changui is really important for us percussionists as well, because it is solely on the offbeats. They don't play really any downbeats on this instrument in this style of music, and I thought Sheila would get a kick out of that also. So for example, if we have the downbeat like this, 3, 4, 1.
Explosion.
So the tres player would go bam bom bing dong bing dong bing down bing gong bing gong bing gong gong dong bing bam bing bong bing dong down bing bing. So you can hear where that influence of the tres influenced the piano a lot in Cuban music. Bam bom bom bing bom bing dong bing dong bing bom bing bom bing dong bing dong bing bom bing bom bing bom bing bom bing. So that kind of stuff is, there's all kinds of syncopation in Cuban music, obviously. So listening to a lot of Changui, which is extremely syncopated music, will help open your ears to that kind of stuff. Yes, Francine.
It's not that important, but I don't listen to a lot of pop music, but the few times I have, I'm hearing that groove a lot right now. It seems to be super popular.
Yes.
Don't. It's like the pulse is behind so much pop music I'm hearing right now. And it is very danceable, simple as it is. So.
Right. Definitely. And the thing of this music is the dancing is where the drumming takes its inspiration, so we're not necessarily just playing to play the music, but also to play for dancers. So that's really important to remember while you're playing this kind of music, is that your goal is to feed off of the dancer and have the dancer feed off of you. So just for example, if you check out a music from Puerto Rico called bomba, bomba is to Puerto Rico what rumba is to Cuba. So if you look at the way the dancer interacts with the lead drummer in bomba, the dancer will do a move and the drummer will copy that on the drum. It's not the other way around where the dancer is inspired by the drummer. the drummer will actually have to very intently watch what the dancer is doing and take their rhythm off of the dancer. So and of course that Tresillo rhythm is really big in bomba as well. So there's all kinds of links. So we can expand also on that Tresillo rhythm and turn it into a cinquillo. So if you add two other notes, you go from 3 to 5, and that is the clave essentially of bomba. And just if anyone hasn't heard bomba, I'll just play a little bit. So you can hear that boom, 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 boom. It's all coming from that tresillo. So again, if you add two extra notes to the tresillo, ba, 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 you get the cinquillo. And that's another essential rhythm that's all over Cuba. You know, it's found in Brazil, it's found in Puerto Rico a lot. So let's work on that a little bit. Cinquillo, 1, 2.
With the cinquillo, are you able to do the 1 and 2 and 3 and
Yeah.
for that so that I can rock it?
1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 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 4, 1. 4, 1. So again, that rhythm is the rhythmic cell that's really important in this kind of music called bomba. And like Francine was saying, a lot of pop music of today is also using that same boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, ba, which was, of course, you know, in reggaeton, that's a really big aspect of that rhythm. You know, there's dembo, other styles, which also use that exact same thing. I can think of funky samba rhythms that use that as well. So that the and of two, you know, is one of the big things that we'll think about. I like to just put all the rhythms together and work on going between them seamlessly as just an exercise. Not that you would necessarily do this in a musical arrangement, but just to make sure that you remember them without having to think too much, and then it just becomes kind of a second nature. So let's start with Son Clave, then we'll go to Rumba Clave, then we'll do a Tresillo, and then we'll do a Cinquillo. So each one, let's do 2 times. So it'll sound like this. Then Rumba Clave, Tresillo, and Cinquillo. Back to Son Clave. Rumba Clave. Tresillo. Cinquillo. Tresillo. Son. Rumba. Tresillo. Sorry. And Cinquillo. Son Clave. Rumba Clave. Tresillo. Cinquillo. Great. So those are the 4 basic claves that we can cover today. Of course, there are others, some which take up a lot more bars, and some which are, simple, like the Changui Clave. But the common thread, of course, is the Tresillo, which is a really ubiquitous rhythm all over Latin America. You can hear rhythms based around that rhythm, and that is one of the important things about this the common aspects in these kinds of music is that the rhythmic cells lock into each other like that. So you have the Tresillo, which matches with the Cinquillo. Ba 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 ba, and so many different rhythms on the congas or whichever percussion instrument is playing and accompanying will play things that outline that rhythm. For example, if you took like a rhythm adaptation for congas of a macuta rhythm. So that you can hear in this one is playing a Cinquillo. Ba 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 ba. think, you know, starting with tomorrow, if anyone has congas of their own, definitely bring your congas if you're coming back tomorrow, because I'm planning on doing just the workshop on, you know, conga technique, basic rhythms, and you know, ideas of studying the conga, because the conga is not only, you know, just something to have fun with, but it's also a beautiful history and a beautiful study. And, you know, it teaches you a lot about yourself as well when you're studying the conga, because, you know, you just have your hands and you are getting everything out of this simple one skin, but your hand can do so many things just with the conga. So, you know, we're gonna get deeper into that. And, you know, every class is not gonna be necessarily super tied to each other. So I'm just gonna do different different aspects of, you know, things that I've learned. So if you can't make it to every class, that's totally fine. You know, and we'll just basically gonna do introductory ideas to get you really deep rooted and started with, you know, any kind of study on congas. You know, we can study bell patterns, güiro, maracas, all the instruments that are important. Bongo, of course. Bongos is a very important instrument in Cuban music and, you know, music of the world. El bongo has gone, you know, on every continent pretty much. So we'll definitely cover all these instruments in the next classes. But I wanted to start today with clave because it's such a fundamental thing. And, you know, even Brazilian music, Venezuelan music, I can think of all kinds of examples of places where you will hear clave. So speaking of Brazilian clave, the Brazilian clave, the standard one that you may have heard, sounds like this. So instead of now we have a displacement on the two side, so that second note is going to be displaced by an eighth note on this one. So I'm going to count this one for you guys. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So now we have, instead of beat 3, we have the and of 3 on the 2 side. And again, I'm just using 3 side, 2 side as kind of a way to make it easier to think about it, but you wouldn't necessarily always think of it like that. You know, again, it's just pretty much where the melody is fitting, and you'll hear those things. The more you get used to hearing clave, you'll hear how the other instruments, the singers, the melodies will lock in with the clave. But let's all just practice with the last couple minutes.
On the Brazilian clave, there's no sound on the one beat.
You still have the downbeat on 1.
And
It'll be the same as starting with the Son Clave or the Tresillo. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So you have downbeat on 1, you have the and of 2, and you have 4. Then you have the downbeat on 2, and you have the and of 3 instead of the 3. So this is for the standard Brazilian clave. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. 1, 1, 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So basically, I mean, in Brazil, they don't think of it the same way as in Cuba, but you still do hear clave in that music, which basically is like you'll have one side of the bar and another side which is on the other beat, right? So for example, the snare rhythm in Brazilian batucada samba, you'll have that clave accented, right? Or you might hear so that's another good thing to practice, which is playing both the 4 and the and of 4 in the same rhythm. And that'll start to get you to where the cascara or the wawa or the kata is when you start to fill in notes like that, and then you hear where the that kind of rhythm. So all this stuff, we're gonna get more in depth with it later on in the week. You know, I'm gonna cover rumba, which is one of the most important kinds of music from Cuba, because the clave in 4/4 comes from rumba, and in rumba guaguancó we have the rumba clave, and then in yambu, which is the slower kind of rumba, you have the son clave. And from those styles, the clave emerged and became part of the son and of, you know, all the popular Cuban music. Rumba and son, guaracha, cha-cha-cha, those are all secular styles. And then there's also religious Cuban music as well, which also incorporates the clave very deeply, although in a lot of cases you won't have someone actually playing the clave, but you'll hear, if you were to play the clave with, for example, bata drumming, which is religious Cuban music, you would hear that the clave is deeply ingrained in those rhythms, although it's not explicitly being played. So the way they phrase different rhythms, different variations, and there's a lot of variation in this music, a lot of improvisation. All of those things are very strictly played in clave. So with that, you know, this is my introduction to clave. We covered the two main branches of clave, son clave and rumba clave, and we also covered the rhythmic cells of tresillo and cinquillo, which are really important in this kind of music as well. And you know, another thing to remember from this is that 2/3 and 3/2 are, you know, ways we can think about the clave, but it's not necessarily the end all be all for the rhythm, because the rhythm is just clave rather than 3/2 or 2/3 clave. it's just rumba clave or son clave, and you might start halfway through the rhythm or at the beginning of the rhythm. So with that, I really want to thank everyone for being here. I had such a blast being with all of you. And I hope to see you at the next one tomorrow and hopefully next year as well.
Amelia, that was fantastic.
Thank you so much. That was so fabulous.